Lovely, thank you. So a little bit of housekeeping just before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, so we will put the recording on our website. So if anyone wants to come back and watch it at a later date, or if you weren't able to make it today, then or colleagues weren't able to make it, then they'll have open access to that. So obviously, like the slides. We have quite a packed agenda, lots that we want to tell you, but this webinar is really focused on expert review and that journey. Thank you to those of you who submitted questions in advance. It's been really useful, and we've updated some of our messaging and some of the information that we've planned to include in the webinar to address many of those questions. Some of them weren't really specific to this webinar, but towards the end of the presentation, I'll point you into the direction of lots of different resources that will cover quite a few of those points. And we've also got further webinars in the future where you'll have other opportunities to ask those questions as well. So I'll highlight those. If you do have questions for us today based on what we're talking about, you want us to expand further, or you need sort of clarification, please do use the Q&A function. It just helps us to better manage the questions as they come in and sort of track what's been answered and what we'll need to sort of come back to at a later date. And the questions are always incredibly useful, and we do use that to update our more general guidance on our website or in our training materials, or to actually goes into as part of the continuous improvement for the service as well. So thank you for those in advance. So my name is Susan Soulsby. I'm the engagement lead on the Simpler Better funding programme, which is delivering a new funding service for UKRI. Oh. Can you see my slides all right? Are they not? Can I get confirmation from a colleague?
All good, yeah.
Yep, they're good. Okay, thank you. Sorry, it didn't look quite how I expected. Right, so yes, I'm going to give a quick update and overview of the funding service, and then I'm joined by Damien Hatton, who is our lead service designer, who's going to give very much the sort of detailed demonstration of what the expert reviewer journey is, sort of step by step, and to walk through that. And then I've got some additional information to sort of point you towards where you can sort of stay informed and stay up to date with the service. And we've got a sort of good chunk of time at the end of this webinar for questions as well. So let's get sorted. So in case you weren't aware, UKRI is building a new funding service. This really is because we became UKRI a few years ago, and we have quite a few different mechanisms and systems and ways that we deliver funding. Some of those are sort of legacy systems that are due an update or going out of license, but it also, there's a really good opportunity for us to work much more as one organisation, as one UKRI, to have greater standardisation across the ways we work, and to increase the sort of the experience, to make it much more sort of user-friendly and much more sort of modern and up to date with how we deliver our strategy, how we deliver funding across UKRI. So we're building a new funding service, and really the goal is to operate that single user-centered service, to reduce the burden of finding and applying for and managing research funding across UKRI, and really operating that single consistent user-centered service. We are delivering this in an agile and iterative way, which has been running in parallel with GES for a couple of years now. As we've been introducing more and more opportunities onto the new funding service, we've been decreasing the number of funding opportunities being run on GES. And as we've done that, we've introduced different funding types, more functionality, more areas of standardised policy across UKRI. So they've been delivered in parallel, but what you're seeing is still very much a service that is in development. There is still more functionality to come, core functionality for both internal and external users. And really, I think the key thing to note is, if you've been using the service so far, you'll have seen some variation, whether you used it a few months ago or whether you're using it now. Sometimes that's because of when that opportunity was launched, because there may be new functionality or a new policy that applies at that point of view, or it may be because it's a different funding opportunity. But hopefully what you are seeing is greater consistency as we introduce the new service across different types of funding. You are seeing different areas being streamlined, so we're only asking for the core key information at the point that we need it, and with that we're sort of making those efficiencies and increasing the level of predictability in terms of when you do come to apply for UKRI, whether it's to one council or another. So today we are focusing on the expert review journey. Generally speaking, when UKRI runs an opportunity, the application will be received. It will go out to a set of independent reviewers who will look at that application, assess it against the assessment criteria that have been set, and provide their review. Then that will often go to a panel meeting where they'll look at the collection of applications for that opportunity or in that batch, and a funding decision will be made. There are some variations on how that process may be delivered depending on the strategy and the timing of the opportunity and sort of the volume and scale. Generally speaking, that's the journey that we're talking about, and where we're focusing today is very much on that review part. So looking at a specific application. There's going to be a few changes compared to whether you've reviewed for UKRI before, and that's really what we wanted to sort of bring to light today, to show you some of the improvements that we're already delivering in the funding service, but also what's going to look different, what's going to feel different, and where there's sort of like a change in policy. So it's very much a digital application, and you're going to see much more of that within sort of sections of a sort of digital form on the web page. There's fewer attachments, much fewer sort of PDF attachments that you're going to. There still are some in some cases, but a lot fewer than previous sort of applications and how they were structured. There's a much more consistent application question and then assessment criteria sort of pull through. So in terms of how the application is set up, what you would see with the review, how that structures, very much the application questions will mirror the assessment questions that you'd be asked. The guidance that you'll have when you go in and use the service to make a review will be very much there as you complete each section, and Damien will show that in a moment, and sort of how you receive the review and the process for that. A lot of the principles, underlying principles, are still the same. There'll be set assessment criteria that you need to use. The principles for sort of peer review and assessment still apply, and sort of good conduct. And I say it's not going to be a sort of like a reviewer form in the way that you would have received that in GES. That's also going to be is now a much more of a digital format. And the scoring may be different. That's another area that was different depending on which council you would review for in the past. It's now a standardized scoring range of 1 to 6. And we've just got in there a link that will be going into the chat as well. Well, the email address for UKRI. We ask that, because some people may go into their spam folder. So if you can help with the receipt of that review request, would be to make that a known contact in your mailbox. So a couple of the sort of other key changes that you'll notice in applications is the core question set for different opportunity types. So this is the sort of the basis for research grants, the core criteria that will be asked, applicants will be asked to provide information against, and then you would need to assess against for the majority of applications. There may be additional questions depending on the strategy of that opportunity and what's being achieved, but that will be made clear in your guidance when you come to review. And that's one of the areas where you'll see much more sort of commonality, no matter what sort of the different funding types or the council that you'll be assessing for, or the opportunity. But then that's also going to have greater, that's sort of the basis that you'll see for different funding types as well. Another area of change is the role types on grant applications. So we've moved away from principal investigator, and the new terminology is project lead, project co-lead. So you can see there's 12 role types listed there. The UKRI had over 35 different types and sort of varying eligibility across those. So we've done an analysis and sort of got it down to those 12 roles. They won't necessarily apply to all opportunities. It depends on sort of what was applicable for that specific opportunity. But again, we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of those sort of key changes and those new roles. One of the other sort of big things that you'll see that's different is we've really sort of taken out a lot of the unnecessary detail that wasn't required as part of the assessment and awarding process when it comes to the level of information we collect on resources and costs. So there's fewer data fields, and the level of sort of the breakdown of that is sort of digitized and say much more streamlined based on what's required. You'll also see all the application costings and information as one application. It won't be sort of broken down as sort of the lead grant and then partner grants. So you're not having to jump across multiple sort of parts of one application as part of that. So really trying to make things a lot simpler and easier for when it comes to the reviewing process. So you've got all the information to hand and that it's really sort of concise on the information that you require. So I'm going to hand over to Damien now, who's going to give you a demonstration of the funds.
Thanks, Suze. Okay, so I'll share my screen and I'm going to walk you through what you could expect to happen and demonstrate what you'll see when you've been asked to do a review for one of our applications. So I'll share my screen and walk us through that. So the first thing that you will find when you get asked to do a review is that when you go into your email, you'll get an email from us, which is one of these invitations to review. You may have been found via numerous sources from the Research Council. When they're looking to find reviewers, they will use different databases, or they'll be referring to their peer review colleges and so forth, and look for people whose expertise match the applications that they've received. We will typically reach out to, I guess, up to 10 reviewers for any given application, and with a view that we get ideally sort of 3 to 5 reviews per application. And if you have been identified as a reviewer that matches one of our applications, you will receive an email that looks like this, and it will be a request to do a review. And so what you'll get in your email should be enough information for you to decide whether or not you want, or you're able to do the review. So it's got some information on the application. It's got a review deadline here. I'll talk a little bit about that more shortly. You've got all of the people that are involved in the grant application, and so this is important for you to identify whether you have a conflict of interest or not. For example, if you belong to the same organization as one of the applicants, then that would constitute a conflict of interest, and I've got some more information on that shortly. And you'll get a summary. So this is what you might have often heard referred to as an abstract. We're calling it a summary. It's essentially the same thing. And we expect there's enough information here for you to determine whether this is the type of thing that you have the expertise in and you feel that you might be able to review. And so there's a big green button that says respond now. I encourage you all to respond as soon as you can, whether it be a positive response and you can do the review or not. If you can't do the review, it's really quick. I'll show you what happens if I click respond now. You don't need to log into the system or create an account or jump through any hoops. You simply press the decline, continue, provide a reason why, and you hit the decline button. The reason that's important to us is because it means we get that decline come through immediately and we can move on and find somebody else to do this review. But if you leave it in your inbox, we don't know if you're going to respond or not. So I do encourage everybody to decline quickly. As I said, it's super easy to do that if you can't do the review. But of course, we hope that you can do the review. And again, it's quite simple to accept that and move forward from this point. So I'll demonstrate that now. So I'll hit the accept button. It just has a couple of bullets here that's to ensure that you do believe that your expertise is relevant and then you have the time. From the point you accept this, you have 21 days to do the review. And we also talked about conflicts of interest. So if you're not sure of what constitutes a conflict of interest, you can have a look at what some more information on that around what constitutes a conflict of interest. But let's assume we're okay to proceed here. I'll hit the accept button. And now it's asking me to sign in so that I could do the review. Now, you might, and certainly through our research, that we found that a lot of people will accept to do the review, and it's unlikely you're about to go straight into that and do the review. And so you can get back to this point via your email, the original invitation email that we just looked at to ask you to do the review. And if you click the green button again, it will bring you back here. If your email address is one that already has a funding service account, you'll be asked to sign in. If it's an email that we don't recognize, it will ask you to create an account. It's a very quick process to create an account. You're not dependent on any other third parties or organizational verification or anything like that. You simply need to provide your name, your email, and come up with a password, and you can create an account very quickly. But I do have an account. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in now and assume that I'm ready to do this review. Bear with me while I find the right account. Okay, so I'm just signing into the funding service so that I can now do my review. I've got a lot going on here. This is a dummy account in our kind of test environment, but I guess it's worthwhile noting that as reviewers, we would also expect that you're likely to be creating applications, or potentially you might be invited to do a panel, and that you could do all that from your funding a service account. But today we're going to look at reviews. So I've got a number of here. This is unlikely to occur, as in you're not likely to be asked to do this many reviews at once, but this is the review that I've been asked to do. And when you go in and go to look at that review, we need you just to, again, I guess, sign up to our reviewer protocols. This is some guidance around, a best practice in order to conduct a review. Please read that. There is some additional information available here. And assuming you're all okay with that, then you can accept to do the review. It's worth noting that one of the big shifts, I guess, from the JES system to the newer system is we're really aiming to provide yourselves as reviewers, but certainly applicants as well, everything they need to know about what they need to do within the service at the time that you need to do it. So there shouldn't be really a need to go and reference documentation that you might find on a web page or anything like that. But the only page or the only information you'll really need to refer to is what's in front of you, and potentially the page where the opportunity is on the website as well. But I've accepted to do this review now. It's giving me some summary information here, but let's jump in and see the application that we've received here and ask you to review. So one of the shifts, I guess, again, from the JES service is we're shifting toward a digital service and moving away as much as possible from dependency on documents or PDF files or things that you need to download. That's a work in progress. We're still having to require people to provide attachments occasionally, but what we want to be able to do is to be able to provide a whole application on the one screen with everything you need to know on the one screen. This whole application is navigable with the menu on the left, which has got all of the sections in it, and you can use that to jump to each of the sections, and you can read it all online. But of course, we know many of you like to be able to print things out or create a PDF. You can do that with the print link that you'll find under the contents menu, and that will generate you a PDF of the whole application should you wish to take that offline and work on it on the train or whatever it might be. So before I drill into writing the review, Sue's talked briefly about our harmonization of the standard questions that we ask and the standard assessment criteria that we look for. And this summarizes that here, which is generally we're looking at the vision. So what's your big idea? Why is it a great one? Your approach, how are you going to go about it? What's your methodology? Who are the core team? And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail shortly. And what's their capabilities? We've got some ethical things that we need to ensure that people are doing things the right way. And then, of course, how much it costs. Now, these are the standard questions for a typical research grant. Of course, if we're funding something a little bit different, such as equipment, we'll see some variation in that. Or if it is something like a commercialization grant, we might need to ask questions like, what is your market? How are you going to take it to market and things like that. But for a typical research grant, these are the sections that we'll be typically looking for. And that means that, the application questions and the assessment criteria that goes with that, where we are trying to standardize as wherever it seems practical to do so. But in some cases, there might be an extra bullet point which targets the specific strategic aim of a particular opportunity. But the important thing is that the applicant is provided the same assessment criteria that you are provided in these bullets. So everybody's sort of working off the same hymn sheet, if you like. So as I say, you can go ahead and read the application. You can see we've got the ability for people to embed some diagrams, etc., into their proposal, and you can read that all at your own leisure. And when it comes to writing your review, again, the assessment criteria that the applicant was provided, again, is repeated for yourselves on this tab here. and you can write your review in the box provided. So there's a little bit, well, there's quite a lot of guidance around this. So we've got some guidance on some just typical good practice in writing a review, but also on the right here is essentially what makes your review usable or potentially unusable to UKRI. We don't want you to send in a review that is unusable, so please read these things. It's typically around making sure that you don't identify yourself. That's because our reviews need to be anonymous, and things like, making sure that your comments are based on what's provided in the application and so on and so forth. So hopefully all the information you need to write your review is there. As I said, it's sometimes valuable to also refer back to the funding finder page for the opportunity. Now we've got one big box to write your review in, but I've gone ahead and copied something that I can paste in here. What you'll notice is that this is brought through my bullet points and some formatting here from my Word document that I wrote this in. And so you've got various sort of formatting tools available to you, and you could go ahead and write this in Word and copy and paste it in, or you can write it in the box here. One of the features, I guess, if you like, that we've included here is that as you write your response, you can be referring back to the tab here where you're reading your application. Maybe you're looking at the core team section and you're reading something here. You can flick back to your review and you can carry on writing, and it will kind of remember where you are. So it's easy to sort of go back and forth to the application and back to your review as you write your review. One of the differences that Sue's touched on is around the core team and perhaps the resume for researchers format that we're using at the moment. The core team are not necessarily every individual that need to be costed on an application. These are the people that add weight to the proposal from an assessment perspective. So these are the people that we would expect in the following capability section to be drawn out to talk about why they are the best people to deliver this project. And the resume for researchers format is something that we're using at the moment. We're trialing it we're reviewing the effectiveness of it. The aims are really there to ensure that our applications are inclusive, and we're not drawing on things like publication list metrics in order to come up whether or not we feel people are capable or not, but really it's just to ensure that it is a more open way of applying. So this is where you would receive your information about the team's capability, and you can make your assessment based on that information provided there. One of the other areas that is a little bit different, again, as Sue's pointed out, was around the resources and cost. You're able to come here and see the costs. Importantly, the information that's provided here isn't the same level of detail as has been provided in JES. And that is for the reason that we don't really want reviewers like yourselves looking at line by line costs and determining whether, maybe they could have got those beakers for the lab cheaper or anything like that. It really should be, well, this is the overall cost for the proposal. This is, the amount of staff that we've got on the proposal. Does that represent value for money, in your opinion, in your experience? And so when we ask for a justification of resources, we're not asking for every line-by-line breakdown or to be justified, but rather the larger or perhaps out of the typical realm of what you might expect for a project of like this. These are some things that we're going to call out because, well, actually, we've got some really important travel where we need to travel abroad to do some field work or whatnot. And it's very specific to this proposal, and it will cost a bit of money. And so that's the type of thing we would expect called out around travel. Again, equipment, very similar. We don't expect every, I guess, less expensive item to be called out, but rather if some expensive specialist equipment is required, then we expect that to be justified in the justification of resources to help you with your overall value for money assessment on the application. So that's some of the key differences there. I guess once you have read through all of the application information, you've gone away, you've written your review, then once you're happy with it, you'll need to provide a score. This is something that we've again harmonized right across the organization and across the research councils. It's always will be a score from 0 to 6. If you're not sure about what these ranges mean, there's some information on what constitutes, a 4 versus a 5, for example. So refer to that. You can give the application a score. I'll give it a 4 today, and then you can check and submit that. And so what this does is it'll just roll up your review, so you can read and check that and make sure you're happy with it. And so if you're happy with the information you've provided and the score, then you could submit that to UKRI. And so what happens now, once you've gone ahead and submitted that, is that it will be received instantly by UKRI. They'll check it to make sure it is usable and that you, for example, haven't identified yourself or used any inflammatory language or anything like that. And once the appropriate number of reviews have been received against an application, then typically that would be sent back to the PI or the principal investigator or a project lead, as we're calling it, for a response. And so the PI will typically get the chance to make a response. If there's anything that you have called out as a reviewer that says, well, this was great, but they didn't address X, Y, and Z, then the PI has the opportunity to address X, Y, and Z in their response before your review goes to perhaps a panel meeting for a consensus assessment. And so that's the overview of the process to write a review. We are really excited by what we're doing now in the funding service. As I said, we're constantly improving on the funding service month by month and iterating on it, making it better. We're constantly doing that for the next few years. It is a service in its sort of, I guess, infancy at the moment, but everything that we're seeing is open to reviews that we're conducting regularly on the service, and those reviews will result in continuous improvement. So I'll stop sharing there and I'll pass back to Suze.
Thank you, Damien. That was really useful. Let me just get my slides back up. So I wanted to highlight that there's some additional contact points for when you have when you receive your reviewer invite. So rather than going to the funding service help desk, if you do require some additional advice in terms of conflicts of interest, or if you need an extension on your reviewer sort of deadline, there is a council specific contact that will be in your invite email. We have those listed there. If you do have technical queries, however, about actually how to use the service or accessing the review, please do use the Funding Service Help Desk for those inquiries. In terms of when you come to do your review, just wanted to highlight as well that there may be some variation that still occurs, you know, from if you're doing one review one week and then another week. So there may be variation in those opportunities within the applications, depending on when the opportunity was actually launched, and so what policies or functionality apply at the time. There'll be variation because of the actual funding type, or perhaps because of the strategy for the funding opportunity that application is being made against. So as much as we are standardizing and we have those core sort of question sets, there may still be some level of variation, but hopefully you'll see much less than compared to when you have reviewed for UKRI in the past. And as always look at we always ask you to focus on what are the assessment criteria and the requirements for reviewing that specific application, because of whether those variations sort of do occur. We had quite a few questions in advance, and we've had quite a few additional questions throughout this webinar as well, around sort of resume for researchers and some of the additional guidance. So we've added some extra sort of information here, which I think will cover most of those questions off, but we can sort of come back to this at the end as well if there's more to say. So R4RI, Resume for Researchers in Innovation, is where UKRI and another other funders as well. UKRI is committed to a narrative CV based approach to how we collect information about sort of track record type information. So it was first initially sort of launched back in December 2021, and it's been rolled out over the last couple of years. And certainly you're seeing it sort of rolled out and implemented much more this year as well. So it's part of a much wider ambition to create a more inclusive and supportive research and innovation culture, where traditional CVs can often be quite narrow, and they often sort of focus on education history and publications, when there's other areas of people's track record that are important to showcase and to bring to light. So it really helps to bring those other areas into the application process, so that individuals applying can highlight sort of their essential skills, in addition to those sort of other sort of more traditional features that really go into sort of, you know, what would be important for that team or that individual to deliver, and their capability to deliver that piece of research. So it's a flexible format, as Damien sort of showed. It's sort of got these 4 key areas which it break down. There's no one correct area for the formula for assessing research for R4RIs. But it's really important that you always look at the specific guidance for how it applies. There is additional guidance on, in addition to what goes on the funding service, there's extra resources and tools that are on the UKRI website, and we can sort of add the link to that in the chat as well. But that includes a whole resources library. So we encourage you and colleagues to check that out if you haven't done so already. It's always important that you consider it in context of the rest of the application. and that you always score it against the assessment criteria. We say that for all of the assessment areas of assessment within an application. And really sort of focus on the content and what the key things that the team bring forward. Generally speaking, in terms of what we're looking for in a review, and these are sort of principles that have carried over from whether you'd have applied to whether you would have assessed for UKRI in the past. The sort of real key things are that you familiarize yourself and use the scoring matrix, that you provide comments and recommendations, not just a score and a comment on this bit was good, that bit less so. It really helps when it comes to the panel meeting, where there's that further explanation that sort of goes into more detail about why something met the specific assessment criteria particularly well. So we ask that you provide comments in a comprehensive way, but you keep it concise. We're not asking you to write War and Peace with these. Really identify the strengths and the weaknesses that you've seen within the application, and highlight any sort of concerns, but raising those in the form of a question, so that when it comes to the project lead writing the team writing their response, that it can be sort of formatted in a much more sort of constructive manner. And yeah, we need to see the last one, avoid jargon. I think just an appreciation for when it goes to that panel meeting, it might not all be experts in your field of research. So having it sort of more accessible is always important. We also had lots of questions about where people can find additional information. On UKRI website, there is lots of information about about current and future funding opportunities, so where to find funding and what funds are available. In addition, for the Simpler Better funding programme, we've got specific pages and information on the funding service. There's quite a lot of different background information depending on whether you're an applicant, an assessor, or research office administrator or manager. There's a whole host of training videos and guidance, and based on sort of a lot of the frequently asked questions, we add additional content onto there. We also have a new page that we've put on in the last couple of weeks, which is very much a service updates page. So if there's that sort of, we'll give a report if there's a particular sort of notice about the service, whether there's a new release or whether there's been an issue with access over that period as well. So that's a really good one to sort of stay up to date with the latest news on the service. On our web pages, we've also got recordings from previous webinars, and additional resources, so our training videos. We have some transition pages as well, with the research councils have provided additional information, particularly about their much larger schemes like responsive mode and their own transition plans. So that's another sort of useful source to sort of stay up to date with councils have there. As I said, a whole host of different training videos and resources that are now online, and there's more to come. They'll continue to be updated. We tried to keep a lot of them sort of very sort of short and sweet, so they're very focused on depending on which part of the service you might need to learn about. And they most of them feature Damien, who was on who's on the webinar today. And yeah, they'll continue to be updated, and there's more to come on there as well. We've also got a user briefing which focuses on sort of three main sort of user types, and that again sort of pulls out what is key information that you would need to know depending on whether you're an applicant, research office administrator, or whether you're a reviewer. And we put a lot of the FAQs in there as well, so you've got that information at your fingertips. We have a newsletter, the Simpler Better newsletter that goes out quite regularly. So you can sign up and subscribe to that, again, so that we can sort of keep you informed with things with the funding service as they progress, new functionality, new policies, for example. We have additional webinars, and we promote those through our various sort of com stalls, but also they get posted on the UKRI events page, and we've got a couple that will be going up soon that people will be able to sign up to, particularly for sort of research office support. And we've also always got an open invitation for people to get involved in our user research. So that link's gone in the chat as well. Really sort of to help, asking you to help get involved by user research to help sort of with our development and designs for future functionality as well. So I'm going to stop sharing there. I know we've had a whole load of questions come in, and we've got Hannah. Hannah, you're on. So Hannah, what was our first question?
So can we delete applications from our account? Usually, sorry, currently they can't, it feels like they can't be deleted.
Right at the moment, no, but this is something that we'll be introducing as we get more of greater volume of applications. We'll starting to provide features to enable people to manage their volume of applications, but as the applications are low at the moment, this hasn't been a priority.
And does a call get published on UKRI website for volunteers to express interest to become a reviewer?
That's an interesting question. It's very much going to be a council specific sort of question, depending on how they sort of do their recruitment. Quite a few of the research councils have colleges of reviewers who support the lion's share of the sort of reviewing for their council. Yeah, I don't know if Damien, you've got anything further you want to add to that?
No.
Can we change details, email address, affiliation during the review process?
You will need to, if you've received an email to do a review, you'll need to carry on with that email in order to complete it. We are working on the ability for people to update their emails and indeed the organizations they belong to. But I think the answer to that is that you should, for the sake of the review that you've been asked to do, stick with the email that you were requested it through.
And where can I find the criteria to carry out a structured review?
So the assessment criteria is available both on the funding finder opportunity page for the opportunity, but it's also on your screen when you're conducting your review. So we recommend that you follow the structure that is indicated above the box where you write your review.
And with the new reviewer form having a less structured format than previously, project leads may receive reviews from reviewers in a variety of formats. Has there been any consideration given to the experience of project leads in responding to reviews that may have varying formats?
Well, yes, and indeed there's an impact on the panel, which is the subsequent assessment process as well. So, you know, we're reviewing the reviews that we're receiving in a single box. I think our principles with the funding service is to start simple and add complexity where it's needed. And, you know, based on that principle, we're starting with reviews in a single box. But if it turns out that we feel we'll get better, a more efficient process using multiple boxes, then we'll be able to develop the service in that way in the future.
And will reviewers receive a brief about each project role that is appropriate to the scheme before they review?
So there is information on the website in terms of the definitions of our different roles that can be nominated against an application. I would say that, you know, apart from your project leads, commonly known as principal investigators or co-project leads, co-investigators, it's more about, I guess, the people and what they're saying that they're going to contribute as part of their capability or their resume for researchers track record. So I guess I'd say don't be too hung up on the labels that have been attributed to people in the service. It's more about who those people are and what they're going to do.
And will applicants have more time to respond to reviewers' comments on TFS?
I believe the time that the PI has to respond is similar to what it was in JERS.
And does the applicant receive a summary of the reviews to respond to the reviews in full?
So the applicant gets notified when there is an adequate number of reviews received for their application, and at that point is offered the ability to respond. And they will log into the funding service where they will see the reviews that have been completed in full, and so they'll be responding to the full reviews as available to them on the funding service.
And is there a need for the team to provide evidence, i.e. papers, reports, or outputs for skills and expertise statements made in the sections?
The short answer is no. We would expect that there's enough information provided, you know, within the service for reviewers to make their assessment on people's capabilities. I guess there's nothing stopping reviewers from looking up these people, you know, online or whatever, but you know, the assessments should be based on what is provided in the application.
And will you be reintroducing the ability to recommend reviewers? And is there a matching process?
So where the idea of applicants nominating reviewers themselves is something that the policy team have been looking at. We don't have a policy person with us today. Currently, the service doesn't enable the ability for applicants to nominate reviewers, and I guess that process is in review.
And I'll just go down. Are reviewers allowed to click on hyperlinks within applications?
Yeah, so again, similarly, our advice is that, so I mean, one of the great things of the internet is that we can have hyperlinks and that we have enabled them in the service, and we've been investigating how to utilize these best. Our general advice to reviewers again is that you're not under any obligation to investigate the hyperlinks as provided in applications. It's up to your discretion, but if you feel that you need some more information that has been provided in a hyperlink, then yeah, you're more than welcome to go ahead and do that. But as I said, your review should be based on what's been provided in the application.
And is it possible to include a feedback, I presume from the applicant, on panel review?
So yeah, look, feedback's really important. We want to make sure that people are able to improve both their applications and their reviews. Where we're actually looking at that in the service in terms of the feedback that we provide at various stages. And yeah, our aim is certainly to be able to provide feedback where it's practical to do so. And
how do we provide feedback on TFS?
Well, it's our process of providing feedback in the service is in development, but it would eventually be available within your account, and you're likely to be notified. But as I said, we haven't released that part of the service yet, so
Generally speaking, though, if you've got feedback on the actual service, there's the feedback sort of bit bar right at the top of the screen for that all users can use.
Yes,
and that comes direct to our team.
that's it. So that's so if yeah, so I was talking about getting feedback on your application. If you want to provide feedback to us to help us improve the development of the service, yeah, as Sue says, there's a link on every page that at the top of every page that says feedback. So please do use that. It helps us make a better service.
But the focus certainly for feedback on assessment is the project lead after they've received the reviewer reports. That's the main avenue for that one.
And will there be a way to include all the files as a single PDF as there was in JES?
So yeah, as I went through in the demonstration, you can create a single PDF of everything that's been provided in the application, but in some cases we're having to ask applicants to provide additional information in separate PDF attachments, and where that is the case, you'll need to download those separately and combine them with your PDF of the rest of the application. But as I say, we're working toward reducing the number of attachments required in the service, so that should become less of an issue.
And I think that covers all the questions related to today's webinar.
Oh, I did spot one actually. Well, there's a few in there, but I'm happy to pick up another one. So there was one question particularly about the scoring, which is 1 to 6, and I think that particular person has suggested that maybe a more sort of formalized binary score might be more useful. So the scoring of 1 to 6 has been based on looking at what the research councils have certainly used over the past few years, and the 1 to 6 score for a reviewer is quite common, and I personally have seen sort of that full range being used sort of quite successfully. And so there was analysis based on sort of lots of different scoring mechanisms and scales, and that's obviously what's come out as the strongest approach. So I think that's what we'll continue to use, and that sort of is proving sort of really quite successful in the majority of cases. But I think the key thing as well, as in addition to that, is where we ask for, it's always really important to provide the added commentary, the evidence behind your comments, or how you come to that score, which criteria were particularly strong, which were less so, and what are those key questions that need to be answered by the project lead and the team for when it goes to panel. So where those gaps might occur, and that assessment is justified and explained is really what helps the panel sort of make that distinction between applications when it comes to the panel assessment.
There's just a comment, just quickly, I think we've got a bit of time, around the example in the walkthrough of the R4RI section included a large introductory section with small amounts of text under. Yeah, anything in that demonstration was for demonstration purposes only in terms of the content, and not sort of indicative of what perhaps we would expect. So really, I guess we'd expect a lot more information under the module headings. In fact, a lot more information on a lot of the application. We just used artificial intelligence to generate something generic for that. So please don't use that as a guide.
One of the sort of like final sort of thing I'd like to just add is when you complete your review, we ask that you don't reveal information about yourself and your expertise or your history as a reviewer. You do need to, or we need you to remain anonymous. So please don't include lots of information about yourself within the review. Otherwise, it risks sort of being marked as unusable in those instances, which would be a real shame to lose the effort that you've already put in. So Thank you everyone for your time. Thanks for Damien, Hannah and the team sort of behind the scenes, and we'll continue to sort of look at those questions and add those to our FAQs for that user briefing and other sort of content. And please keep an eye out for our future newsletters and events. Thanks everyone.